What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop. So in case you haven't heard, there's this new mobile game called Pokemon Masters that just came out on Thursday that's all about bringing together all the best Pokemon trainers from the entire history of the series. So with all this talk of all these amazing trainers coming together, it got me thinking, if you really were to bring all of these characters together and have them battle it out for the title of greatest trainer ever, who would actually win? Well, as interesting of a question as this is, it's also a big one to answer, so I've brought in friend and fellow PokeTuber MysticUmbreon to help me out with this one.
Hey guys, my name is Mystic, and I do a variety of Pokemon content over on my channel. I do top 10s, speculation, and create the best possible teams for a playthrough. In fact, over on my channel, Hoops and I did a best team for Yellow, where we created a team that was best suited for taking on Kanto and the Pikachu fashion. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely check it out over on my channel when you're done here.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to establish here are who exactly we will be considering for this title. Just to weed out the obvious weaker trainers right off the bat, we are only going to be looking at champions, super bosses, and player characters in this video. This is essentially because these trainers are already the best trainers in the games to begin with. Champions because they're literally the champions, super bosses which are trainers stronger than the champion that can be battled after defeating the game, and since by definition they are stronger than the champion, they get in too, and finally player characters because they obviously end up beating everybody regardless.
With each character, we will be looking at their strongest current iterations, minus specialized appearances in certain battle facilities where level caps are involved and different things like that. And in the case of certain characters like Steven Stone or Cynthia appearing in multiple categories, they will assume the role of whatever category we're looking at when we're evaluating them. So for instance, when discussing champions, we will be looking at Champion Steven, and when looking at super bosses, we'll be looking at Super Boss Steven. Finally, when it comes to the player characters, because not all of them have a canon in-game team, we will be resorting to the Pokemon Adventures manga as a source, since it is the most official source there is for the teams of the player characters when they don't already have an established team in the games themselves.
Next up comes how we are going to judge these characters specifically. In each category, trainers will be pitted against each other in a tournament-style matchup and will be judged head-to-head based on 3 factors: the level of their team, the type matchup of their team compared to their opponent, and the average base stat total of their team itself. Whoever wins 2 out of these 3 categories will move on to the next round, so to speak, until we have a champion in each category. Then the champions of the categories will face off to determine who is truly the best of the best.
Because there is a ton to go over here though, we won't be able to delve into every matchup in detail for the sake of time, but we will discuss key trainers, matchups that stood out, and of course the final matchup of every category that ultimately determines who is moving on to the finals. Those are pretty much all the rules though, so why don't we go ahead and get into the battles, shall we?
Starting off in the champions category, we have Blue, Lance, Steven, Wallace, Cynthia, Alder, Iris, Diantha, Kukui, because yes, he is the stand-in champion of those games, so it counts, Hau for the same reason, and Trace. Now, even though we did give everyone a fair shot during this analysis, there are a couple people we can axe right off the bat, like Wallace, Hau, and Trace. Wallace because even at his strongest, his Pokemon are only in the 50s, compared to the 60s and 70s for everyone else, and because his team is mostly one type, which is obviously a huge weakness. Hau is nothing special either, but he was immediately cut due to the fact that his strongest ace Pokemon in his starter, or Primarina in this case as that is the team we chose for him, only has 3 moves, and those kind of rookie mistakes are just absolutely unacceptable if you want to be the best trainer ever. Trace was also cut due to the fact that his team isn't made up of the strongest Pokemon ever, and he was pretty easy for anyone in this group to defeat.
The trainer that ultimately ended up winning out though is probably not going to be that much of a surprise, and that would be Cynthia. Cynthia's average base stat total for this iteration of her team is a gargantuan 535, and honestly, there wasn't anyone who could even approach that, giving Cynthia an automatic win right away. From there, the thing that clinched it for her was Spiritomb. While Cynthia was able to have a type advantage with either her Pokemon's types or their moves to every single one of her opponent's Pokemon, almost none of them had an advantage on Spiritomb, since Spiritomb is only weak to Fairy, and this combo basically gave Cynthia the sweep of this category. While Alder, Iris, and Blue held their own pretty decently, the person that came closest to beating Cynthia was, believe it or not, Diantha, as she had the Fairy type to counteract Spiritomb, but came up short in the base stat department, only averaging 525 for her entire team.
Moving on though, it is now time to look at the player characters. As we said in the intro, the teams of the player characters come from their respective games where available, and the manga if they don't have a canon in-game team. Since we've got a male and female counterpart for every generation as well, we're going to pit them against each other and have one representative from each generation before the different generations of characters face off against each other. And with that said, the characters who made it out of the pack were Red, Ethan, both Brendan and May since their teams are the same, Dawn, Hilbert, Nate, Caleb, and Serena, because once again, the same, Elio, and Chase.
Before we get into the champion of this category, we might as well take a look at some of the notable contestants. Dawn's team from the manga did pretty well, consisting of Rapidash, Empoleon, Lopunny, Frostlass, Cherrim, and Pachirisu, and both Nate and Hilbert from Gen 5 had some insane teams. Nate's manga team includes both Genesect and Keldeo, and Hilbert also has Reshiram at his disposal in addition to Braviary, Musharna, Emboar, Galvantula, and Caracosta. Ethan's team from the manga are also insanely high leveled, all being in the 80s, but as you might have guessed, the legendary Red won out in this category.
The reason why Red won is simply because his team is the most well-rounded. For this category, we used his Let's Go iteration since there are technically 2 eligible versions of Red, which we will get into later, but his Let's Go team are all level 85 across the board, which is practically impossible to beat. In addition, his average base stat total is 531.67 if you include his Mega Venusaur and count his Pikachu as a partner Pikachu, which has a stat boost in those games. Now, this might be a little bit of a controversial decision, but I figured since this version of Red appears in the game where the partner Pikachu appears, and Red and Pikachu are literally the most synonymous Pokemon trainer duo of all time, I figured it was a reasonable assumption to make on our part. Anyways though, with that said, Red has a very good average base stat total, which makes it hard for anyone to overcome, and his team also has a very good variety of typings as well.
His opponents, meanwhile, while having all good qualities, were just not as well-rounded as Red is. Dawn was probably overall the most well-rounded, but her team lacked the strength and were also a little all over the place in the level department, mostly floating around the 50s. Nate, even though he has 2 legendaries, is severely underleveled, having a Pokemon as low as level 40, with Hilbert also just being slightly underleveled in the 50s, which is a real shame because his team has a base stat average of 528.67, and a great variety of types as well, so this was really his only weakness. Finally, on the flip side, while Ethan has a team comparable to Red's with their levels, it falls flat with its base stats as a couple of his Pokemon, including Sunflora and Sudowoodo, absolutely plummet the average with their poor stats. And it doesn't help either that 5 out of 6 of Ethan's Pokemon are Monotype, which leaves him fairly susceptible when it comes to type matchups.
And last but not least, we have the Super Boss category. As I said in the beginning of the video, this group consists of people who you are able to battle after the end of the game that are meant to act as an insanely strong, true final battle, if you will, that's typically even harder than the champion battle. And this group consists of Red from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Steven, Barry, Cynthia from Black 2 and White 2, Shigeki Morimoto, also from Black 2 and White 2, and once again, Red from Let's Go.
We wouldn't normally include 2 versions of the same character in the same category, but since both Reds are from completely different games and not just different versions of the same game, we decided to allow it. This category is where the competition really started to heat up, as every single one of these trainers is insanely powerful, and none of them are worth overlooking by any means.
Amongst the competitors, Steven Stone was admirable, but didn't quite have enough oomph or type variety to really compete. Morimoto was nothing to sneeze at, but most of his Pokemon were early game Pokemon like Liepard and the Elemental Monkeys, which don't really have the best base stats, and Barry, while actually being insanely good because his team can reach as high as the 80s level range in Pokemon Platinum, depending on how many times you beat the champion, and his Pokemon are strong and have a good variety of typings, his competition were 2 versions of Red and Cynthia, and frankly, there just wasn't a whole lot of hope for him at that point.
When comparing the big dogs though, we might as well start with the 2 Reds. These 2 are naturally very similar, only being very differentiated by 2 separate Pokemon on their respective teams. They both have Pikachu, Snorlax, Lapras, and Venusaur, while Let's Go Red has Machamp and Arcanine. Heart Gold and Soul Silver Red has Blastoise and Charizard. Now while Blastoise and Charizard have slightly better base stats on average compared to Machamp and Arcanine, they're ultimately what does Heart Gold and Soul Silver Red's best team in. Let's Go Red already has a level advantage, having an even level 85 for all his Pokemon, which is higher than 5 out of the other Red 6 Pokemon. Pokemon. When factoring in Charizard and Blastoise though, this makes Heart Gold Soul Silver Red 3 times as weak to electric attacks, including having that second water type in Blastoise, which really just clogs up a type coverage and makes it easy for Let's Go Red to take him out, who meanwhile adds up some coverage to his team with Machamp's fighting type, giving Let's Go Red the win in the type matchup as well.
So now that just leaves Let's Go Red and Cynthia, truly a match for the ages. In this matchup, Red gets the early win in the level department with his level 85 Mons compared to Cynthia's mid-70s Mons. However, Cynthia wins out in the type matchup because while she has some type of advantage type-wise against all of Red's Pokemon, Red does not have the same type of answer for Spiritomb, yet again showing just how valuable Spiritomb is to her team. That leaves the base stats being the tiebreaker here, and while it does come close, Cynthia ultimately wins out. In the player character segment, we mentioned that Red's average base stat total was 531.67 with the help of his Mega Venusaur and partner Pikachu, but Cynthia comes back with a whopping 536.67 average without the help of any type of Mega or stat boosted Pokemon, which just goes to show how incredible Cynthia truly is as a Pokemon trainer.
And now that we've finished going through the 3 categories, we finally have our final 3 contestants, and that would be Let's Go Red, Champion Cynthia, and Super Boss Cynthia. Yeah, you might be able to see where this is going, since we just compared Red and Super Boss Cynthia though. Let's see if Red has any more of a shot against Champion Cynthia. While you might think that someone entering a Super Boss Red would be able to defeat a lowly champion, Cynthia is actually still able to win. While Red does beat her with levels, she still maintains a 535 base stat average compared to Red's 531. And just like last time, Red has no answer for the elusive Spiritomb, which is made even more poetic by the fact that this is Cynthia's weakest Pokemon base stat wise. So even though it might bring down her team's average a bit, it more than makes up for it by leaving almost every trainer Cynthia faces with absolutely no advantage whatsoever against it.
And for the final battle, we have Cynthia against Cynthia? You know, not exactly what I was expecting or even hoping for, because to be honest, I wanted a wild card to come in and show everyone that Cynthia isn't really all she's cracked up to be, but after this, I know she definitely is. Not only did she win 2 out of the 3 categories to make it to the finals, which is something that's impossible for most characters to even attempt, but she's now also won first and second place in this assessment. If that's not a Pokemon Master, I don't know what is. Anyway, Super Boss Cynthia, as you might expect, is the Grand Champion, beating out the champion version of herself by just a hair in levels and base stats. The fact that she has an almost unbeatable force in every single category that we were judging, with a 536 base stat average, which is almost equivalent to a full team of pseudo-legendaries, mind you, a Pokemon that nearly has no weaknesses at all in Spiritomb, and levels so high they nearly can't be beat by anyone, I think definitively shows that Cynthia is absolutely the greatest Pokemon trainer we have ever seen to this point, and it's going to take someone absolutely monumental to even attempt to dethrone her in the future.
Just for fun though, before we end, we wanted to give an honorable mention to 4th and 5th place, who ended up being Berry and Blue respectively. Berry is honestly seriously underrated, as this Pokemon can reach insanely high levels that are only ever outdone by Red, and his team has a great type variety and a great base stat average too. Blue on the other hand has all these factors going for him as well. So closely to Berry, in fact, that the tiebreaker between the two came down to nothing more than type variety. Berry has 9 types represented on his team, while Blue has 8, which resulted in their previously mentioned ranking.
And there we have it, everyone. By our estimation, these are the 5 best trainers we have ever seen ranked in order, with Cynthia being at the top. Prior to Pokemon Masters, there hasn't really been a game with every single trainer in it, and there's been no real way to see who's truly the best, so we hope you guys enjoyed our attempt at analyzing who is really the best like no one ever was. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you came over from Mystic's channel, make sure you subscribe for more Pokemon content every week. And speaking of Mystic, thanks for coming on the channel, bro.
Anytime, dude. Had a blast like always. If you guys want to see the video we did over on my channel, check out the best Team for Yellow that Hoops and I did over there. It was a really fun project, and I think you guys will like it. With that being said though, I'll catch you guys there.
With all that being said though, I'm gonna head over to Mystic's channel now, so be sure to check back here on Tuesday for another video, and until then, I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.
We'll be right back.